In today's eMoney tip of the week, I'm going to talk to you about the most requested topic I get right now, updates to Decision Center. Now, the first thing you need to know is there's two versions of the software. There's an enterprise, where a larger company has some updates that they will hold off on. And there's also what's called the street version, which means you subscribe to this directly through eMoney. I use an enterprise edition of software, my corporate RIA, and my broker-dealer's LPL Financial. So I use the LPL Financial Enterprise Edition. Some of you might be with another bigger broker-dealer or bigger RIA and you use that Enterprise Edition. So your versions of the software will all look different based upon what compliance is willing to push out, based upon what they want to give you access to. If you're using the street version, that means you subscribe directly to eMoney and most likely you have all the features and updates. The features and updates that I'm about to go through, not all of them will you have, but also some of them you might have that I don't have, and I'll point those out. But the key is these have been out somewhere in a ballpark of about a year, depending on which version you have of that. And I think my math's correct in there. I don't look back to the calendar and try to figure out when they released these. This video is being recorded in July of 2022, so it will help you from a reference standpoint of view. So let's get through it. What has changed? Let's talk about the terminology. Let's talk about the language of understanding why it's important. But before I do that, I want to also point out one other thing. We try to keep our eMoney tip of the weeks in 10 minutes or less, most of them trying to be around 5 minutes. Why do we do that? We want you to take these videos and carve out a little bit of time each week to get incrementally better, to build your practice into a financial planning practice that can educate and empower your clients. So we try to keep these short, so this is going to be a multi-part series because there's a lot of information to cover and so many questions I've been getting on LinkedIn. If you have questions and there's part of the software that you've always wondered or want help in, just send me a message on LinkedIn and let me know, because then I can create a video on that. So let's get into it. So what we used to have up here in the top left-hand corner used to be called Techniques, and down here was Advanced Techniques. You can go back if you still have that version of software, and you can watch some of my earlier videos where I talk about this in detail. I'm just going to cover it briefly today because it's important to understand how they're going to be in here. There's also typically a third spot in here, which is solving. I don't have that with my version of software. So if you see a third thing down there, don't worry. It's just a different version of software. So under base facts, when this used to be techniques, what techniques were designed for was one-offs in front of a client. It was made for, and when I always say, Decision Center's working, when it's interactive. When you show a solution to a client and they ask a question, you need to update on the fly. The problem with techniques was they didn't carry over to all the reports. They didn't go in, and if you wanted to build out a report, you could click that technique. You had to have it under Advanced Techniques. Advanced Techniques, which is where the what ifs, was what the real financial planning part of this was. The idea was you have to get in a lot more detail. It wasn't one that was better than the other, but we always used Advanced Techniques because it flows through to everything. What you're going to see in this update now is techniques flow through everything, which is awesome because techniques are easier to do. They're easier to understand when you're inputting it, but also, most importantly, there's certain techniques that were much better. The one I always pointed out was the sell of a business. The sell of a business was much easier to show in techniques, but I couldn't carry it over to reports. So that's the first thing you know that's changed. The second part of this is anything that you had built out in Advanced Techniques came up here. So if you had some type of advanced plan, right, that was up here, it already came in. This is my sample client that I've done tons of videos on. That's why there's so many. So, and I always preach having what's called alternatives. I call it my sandbox. We still believe in that here at Baritone, and we still use that for our clients, but this does change it around. The idea and why they changed this language to planning, which I think was genius. eMoney heard what you've been saying about Decision Center. They made these changes to make it more effective, but also easier to understand. These are the plans you want to recommend. So you want to create these as names. My recommended plan, saving more for retirement. And the idea that each one of these should be some type of iteration of a financial plan. They changed the what ifs down here, and now let's go back to what ifs used to be. What ifs used to only be available on reports. So you would come into a report, you would go in and let's say we were under cash flow, and you got these cool little what ifs here where you could run two different scenarios, but also put what ifs. So the what ifs would impact both the scenarios. The problem was you can build these things out, and it was the same thing you already need to have in an advanced technique. So a lot of times we don't want to build it out twice. Why would we do all that work? It's a great example of this was long-term care. You might want to show long-term care in a report, but then you'd have to build out the technique twice. So again, eMoney heard you and said, let's make the what ifs flow through Decision Center and flow through reports. But also what they did was they made this like some other competitors, where you can start to use this as your stress test area. This will save you a lot of time in terms of building out techniques. The other thing this allows you to do that a lot of people are talking about and want to know my advice on was there were certain things like premature death that were really hard to show next to retiring early. The reason why? Because they were two different advanced techniques that used the same technique. So it became really difficult. So it solved a lot of those problems. So really what this did was give you better language to use in front of a client, language that gels with what we do as certified financial planning professionals, but it also brought all these under one roof. So I'm going to talk to you real quickly about kind of how you can use these inside of here. And then in our next video, I'm going to talk about when we use what ifs, how to build what ifs, how they flow through. So let's talk about this. So let's say you have something in here already built, okay? You would click on this, but let's say you don't. Instead of going inside of here and going and saying let's add a plan, you could actually do it inside Decision Center. Well, just like I always like to use base facts, why not spend time in Decision Center? If that's what you're always going to be in front of clients, get to know it better. So you could have nothing inside of here, right? The base facts, and you can go in here and add a plan. So I think that's a really cool feature. Again, it just makes it so that everything is done inside Decision Center. This is the place we want to live in. It's the best part of eMoney. You can also click on here to go to Advanced Planning Tools. So let's just add a plan. And so we're just going to add this into here. I'm just going to call it Sample. And bam, you got that into here. And so it already creates it here. Now we can go here to Modify Techniques, Rename, Duplicate, Delete, go to Advanced Plan, Add a Plan, and Manage all plans. Well, here's the part I really like about this. Again, remember I said before it was easier to use techniques, but they didn't go everywhere. So you can see right here, Modify Techniques. This should look familiar. Green means add, red means delete, blue means make changes. So now you have the parts of techniques that can be built into a plan. So for example, I said one of my favorites is sell business. I'm not going to show that because this sample client doesn't have a business, but let's go with Social Security. Now you have Social Security comes up here. We're going to hit done. And we can now click on this, and right inside of here, we can make changes. You don't have to bear with me. For some reason, my internet does not seem to be working well with me today. But we can click those changes right inside here and see how quickly on a fly we're not leaving Decision Center. And we can build this stuff out for a client. So we're going to change the name of this. Oops, we'll go back here. We're going to go to rename. Oops, rename. Modify Techniques. And we're going to rename this Social Security at 62. I just want to compare and contrast this. So let's go here to Advanced Planning. The other way to do this, the way we were building it out, is we would want to come in here and we want to make changes to assumptions. I can click assumptions fast enough. All right, and we're going to go here and make changes to assumptions. Make changes to Social Security, and we're going to go in here, and this is the way we used to do it. See how we have to be in Advanced Techniques and we have to do this? Instead now, we can have this inside Decision Center. So what does this allow you to do? This allows you to very, very quickly, when you're in front of a client, to go ahead and make edits on the fly. It's going to make it easier to train your team. It's going to make it easier for those who aren't as comfortable to do these techniques in front of a client on the fly. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, and we're going to talk about the what ifs in my next eMoney tip of the week. We hope this tip helped educate and empower you to do more plans for your clients so that you can impact more lives through financial planning. If you have some great tips we don't know about, we'd love to hear about them. If you have a better way of doing what we just showed you, we'd love to hear about that, because we are a noble profession, and together